There's a bill in the House now. It hasn't passed, but it's still, I think, under consideration to insist that on a naval blockade of Iranian goods. That's an act of war. That's preparation for war. Do you hear Obama or Hillary Clinton or any of these other people saying, that's outrageous, we shouldn't do that, that's aggression? No. No, you don't. In fact, what did Hillary Clinton say? If you don't want to be liberated by us, there's always obliteration. I mean, you're calling for genocide against 70 million people. That's what that means. And I'll tell you what, and this is why I love World Can't Wait, there should have been thousands of people out in the street the minute she said that, but people have swallowed the Obama Democrat Kool-Aid and think that somehow that's going to stop war. My friends, you're just deluding anyone who thinks that is under a delusion. I'm sorry, you know. That's just drinking the imperialist Kool-Aid.
Right. Since I was around in 1968, since when has a street action stopped a war?
Well,
and that's just kind of a pretext. And I'm arguing with you.
That's good. Argue. I like that.
And who has created a grassroots movement that's growing laterally on its own in the last? I'm 62 years old. Who's done it? And who's succeeded? And who's on the verge of the presidency? And I remember George Bush said that he had an interview and he intoned that he was pro-choice. So people say things to get elected. Thank you.
No, thank you. That's a good question. Did everybody hear what was said? I'll repeat it. No, I'll repeat it. And of course I'll mangle it so it sounds ridiculous. No, I won't. I'm just joking. The gentleman said he was around in 1968. Since when did a street protest end a war? That was one point. The second point was, who has built a movement that has really successfully grown? I think that's the gist of what you're saying, right?
Laterally on its own.
Laterally on its own. And then the point is raised, I guess, that Obama's on the verge of the presidency, so why am I saying this now? Is that, I mean, I think that's what...
Well, we have a success here. We have a win.
We have a win.
When was the last time we had a win? When was the last time we were winning anything?
Okay, 3 good questions. And hopefully I'll give 3 good answers. First of all, I think that in the 1960s was an example where social protest, and I never limit social protest to simply street demonstrations. I think in the 1960s and 70s, the social upheaval in this country, multidimensional social upheaval in this country, was an enormous factor in ending the Vietnam War. This enormous factor. And thank you. And one of the things that, you know, and this inspired a very, very, you know, we did an article in Revolution magazine called When John Wayne Went Out of Focus, which was, helped inspire the film, oh, help me, what's the name of that documentary about the GI resistance in, Sir, No Sir, exactly. Michael Slate was one of the contributors to that. And the depth of GI resistance was unbelievable. I mean, it's like, it was just, you know, thousands and thousands of people just refusing to fight. And there was a whole threat to the establishment of it, losing allegiance of a whole section of people turning to revolutionary ideology, the whole counterculture thing. I mean, what would happen in the 60s, the shock waves of it are still being felt today. And what was the key, since you brought up 1968? Good point. What was the key? And I wasn't in Chicago.
The draft.
Well, the draft, okay, but no.
It was self-motivated for preservation. Well, it had nothing to do with anything else.
Maybe. No, well, listen.
And I think that if you would do an expose about what happened, is that Nixon didn't care about people in the streets. You probably wrote it in a book sometime, that he was He quit the war when he wanted to.
Okay, wait a minute now. Okay, you asked your questions. Now let me, I'm taking them seriously. That's why I'm trying to walk through some of these points you're making. Peace, brother? Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's good. It's good. No, we should have these arguments. We need to have these arguments. Very important to have these arguments. Absolutely. So I'm with you on that. But just to finish my point, and then to speak to this next thing you just said, I mean, on this next thing, Daniel Ellsberg, who knows the inside, said that in 1970, the fact that 1 million people marched in the mobilization, and Nixon was watching that every minute on television, prevented a nuclear attack on North Vietnam, which Nixon was contemplating. And there's evidence for this. So this did matter. Especially, and here's my point in 1968. Who was the 68 protest against? It wasn't against the Republicans, it was against the Democrats. And it was against the Democrats, and it represented people breaking out of the confines of the politics as usual, that you've got to pick between one imperialist and another and think that one's a little bit better than the other. And that's what marked the 60s. I know about that. I was there. Nobody gave a flying fuck who their congressman was or what party they were in. You know, we wanted to stop a war. We didn't care who claimed they were this, that, or the other thing. And that's when you had people like the Black Panthers, you had SDS, you had people going after this whole system, and the fact that revolution was in the air terrified the government and the establishment, and was a big part of all this. I mean, why was it? You look at Nixon, he was far to the left of Barack Obama. He was for affirmative action, women's rights, abortion, all these things. What I argue is, no matter who you're voting for, the key thing is people's resistance and understanding our responsibility to resist and to build, you're talking about building a movement, to work to do that.
When has that worked lately?
Hey, it worked in 2003.
What did we accomplish?
We prevented Bush from getting a UN resolution, making it an illegal war. We discredited.
And what did he do?
Wait a minute, brother.
He went to war.
Okay, man, okay. All right, but
You know what a grassroots movement? You know what it connotes?
But you gotta listen to the counter argument, my man.
I've been listening to you for half an hour.
This is your show.
Yeah, that's right. This is my show. Look, I'm gonna be
one
right up
more
there in a
thing.
minute.
One more thing.
Okay.
One more thing. What does a grassroots movement connote? It connotes self-determination. That's what the imperialists are against. That's what we want. Self-determination, a grassroots movement. Thank you. I love you.
Good. I agree with you completely on that last point.